founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Nancy, and we're going to be talking about her new book, Using Behavioural Science in Marketing. Nancy, before we get, explain to people where they can get hold of you.
Sure. So you can find me all over the socials. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter at nharhut nharhut, or just email me nharhut@me.com, and would love to connect with people.
Fantastic. So, Nancy, I was actually saying this before we went on air. I love the book,
Thank you.
and there are and what I mean I saw the book out on LinkedIn. I thought that looks really interesting. I need to get Nancy on my podcast. So I contacted you, etc. And when I started reading the book, and I thought, there'd be a couple of techniques, and then the rest of it would be fluff. And it's not this 25 techniques that you go through. It's like you get technique, and you go. And I was going, I need to use this one. I need to use this one. And as I said to you just before we came on, I put a blog out just the other week, which is you're facing an important decision, and if you don't act quickly, someone else will decide for you. And that was an idea from your book.
Yes, that's called autonomy bias. And the idea is humans have this very deep-seated innate urge to be in control of ourselves and our environment. Like, we like to exercise some kind of control. And what behavioral scientists have found is when you give somebody a choice, that actually makes them feel that they're in control. When you suggest that you're going to take a choice away from them, well, they'll react very strongly against that. So by saying, hey, you've got to make a decision soon, and if you don't, someone will make it for you, that really kind of harnesses that need for autonomy, and it wakes people up and makes them say, "Oh no, you don't. I'm making the decision for myself. You're not going to be interfering in my affairs." So I'm glad that it worked for you. That's good.
Well, it was good. It was one of those where I used it as a blog title and then put it out there, and immediately people doing exactly that. You're not deciding for me, and it just on LinkedIn it got the discussion that I wanted. And it's just a great example of what's in here in terms of the book about the power. Beth, who's just made a comment, I know is in marketing, and it's like one of those. It's one of those books in marketing that you need to read because of the fact there are 25 of those different techniques that you go through. And what I love about it also is that you you tell a story. So one of the stories that you tell is that you were in. I should be interviewing you rather than me telling. So you're in Barcelona.
Yes.
You're in Barcelona, and you say, well, "I'm in Barcelona. I'm going to go for a tapas." You got to do it when you're in Barcelona. Go for a tapas meal. So you got this name of this restaurant, and as you're about to go out, the concierge says, "You're going out. Where are you going? Do you know where to go?" He said, "Yeah, I've actually got the name of this restaurant." And he said, "That's a really nice restaurant, but there's this one as well."
Right, and it was funny because, I thought to myself, "Well, that's unusual." "Where are you going?" I tell them, and instead of saying, "Great restaurant," or "Good choice," or "Enjoy your meal," the response is, "Oh, that's right next door to another one." I'm thinking, "Hmm." So, I said, "Well, is that other restaurant better?" Because the one that I'm going to was referred to me by a colleague of mine. I had posted, on Facebook or LinkedIn that I was in Barcelona, and she had written, said, "Oh my gosh, I'm still remembering this fabulous meal I had at this restaurant." And I looked it up, and sure enough, it was right next to the hotel. So I thought, great, that's where I'm going. And I'm heading out, but the concierge was like, "Oh, that's right next door to another one." So I said, "Well, is that one any better?" But I think, by nature of the business, a concierge needs to be kind of diplomatic. And they just replied, "Oh, well, they're both good. This one is just known for some more, unusual preparations." So I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I thought, okay, on the one hand, I have the concierge, that would be authority, right? Like, that's the person who's supposed to know. And ever since we're young, we're taught to recognize and respect authority. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I should listen to them. On the other hand, I have social proof. A colleague of mine who's similar to me is telling me the other restaurant is great. So I say, well, look, they're next door to each other. I'm just going to walk there, and I'll make my decision when I see the restaurant, look at the menu. And I get there, and the one that the concierge recommended was dead, Tim. There was nobody there. It was so quiet. And right next door was this bustling restaurant. And There was a line out the door, and I was like, in a moment, I was like, absolutely going to the bustling one.
You're
Like,
going
I'm
to join the line, aren't you? Because there's got to be something. If there's a
sure.
line outside the restaurant, it's got to be good, isn't it?
It's gotta be all those people must be eating there, all those people are eating there, it must be good, so I put in my name, and fortunately, I was able to get seated relatively quickly, which was amazing given how many people, and I had a fabulous meal, and then I thought, "Oh, but you know what's gonna happen? I'm gonna go back to the hotel, and that concierge is gonna say, 'So, what did you think of my recommendation?'" And I didn't ask for the recommendation, but they gave me one, and that actually triggers something called the reciprocity principle, where even if you don't ask for something, if you're given something, whether or not you ask for it, if you're given something, you kind of feel indebted to the person who gave it to you. And I thought, I don't want to, I don't want to say, oh, I didn't go. So I thought, well, I know what I'll do. I'm going to go next door and I'll have dessert, I'll have a little dessert tapas and
Yep.
that'll be fine. I walk out. The next door restaurant that the concierge had recommended was jammed with people, jammed with people. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I kind of, wormed my way up to the hostess stand and I said, "Gee, is there any chance you can see two of us?" And the hostess had just hung up the phone and she said, "We are completely booked, but I just got a cancellation. It was meant to be." And she, led us to the only empty table in the place where I not only had dessert, I had another full meal because the food was so unbelievably good. So, it's just interesting. So many different behavioral science principles at play there, the authority principle and social proof and reciprocity. And, the result is I came home 10 pounds heavier because of behavioral science. But it was a great experience. But it's just really interesting the different ways that we make decisions. And I when I first got there and there was no one at the place that the concierge recommended, I thought, oh, maybe they get a kickback or something for recommending it, and that's what that whole game is. And it just turned out that they had a later crowd, and both of the
The
places were good.
in Spain they always go out later. They tend to go out at 10 o'clock ish, or rather than in the UK we tend to go out for a meal at like 6 o'clock, whereas in Spain they always go out later.
Yeah, yeah. Although one was bustling, right after work, and the other one was, so maybe it was an after work crowd versus a serious dinner crowd.
Mm.
But I mean, they were both fabulous. I'd go back in a heartbeat. Let me tell you, they were both
So
good.
what was the inspiration behind writing this then, Nancy? Because you're a first time author, so you got opportunity to write your first book. What was the inspiration?
So, what happened was a number of years ago, I read Robert Cialdini's Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, and I loved it. And I was underlining things and highlighting and making margin notes and thinking about, how can I use this in marketing? Because I am a marketer, I'm a creative director at an agency, right? And so I work for a bunch of different clients. And I was reading this book and I'm like, I could use that to help with this client. I could use that to help with this client. So I started to apply some of these techniques, and sure enough, they're working. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So I, progressed to the point where now I've co-founded an agency, hung out my own shingle, and this is what we focus on. We focus on adding behavioral science to marketing best practices to increase the likelihood that people will engage and respond to the marketing messages. And I speak at a lot of conferences, and I'm really passionate about this because I know that it works. And then Kogan Page noticed that I was going to be speaking at South by Southwest in Austin. And so they reached out to me from the UK and said, would you be interested in submitting a book proposal on your topic, behavioral science, marketing? And so I thought, why not? A couple of times I'd spoken at conferences and people would say, oh, I want to buy your book. And I'd be, oh, that's really sweet. I don't have a book. And, it would happen again and again. I'd say, oh, it's really sweet. I don't have a book. But when Kogan Page offered me the opportunity to submit a proposal, I thought, there are only so many clients I can work with. There are only so many conferences I can speak at. If I write a book, so many more people who do marketing, whether they have marketing in their title or whether they're doing a bunch of things and marketing is one of them, so many more people will have access to these tactics and techniques that and actionable practices that really, really make a difference. It's like, I've got to do it. So I submitted the proposal, and Kogan Page accepted the proposal, and here we are.
So but you've got a background in. I mean, you talk about your background in advertising and marketing in the book, and you actually bring a number of, as well as telling a story about like the story about Barcelona. You also quite often explain the story behind how you use that technique in your career. So, for example, the one that I talked about earlier on, which was you are facing an important decision. If you don't act quickly, someone else will decide for you. Was, I think there was a cable TV.
Yeah, there
Um,
were a couple of examples actually. Because what I try to do in the book is I try to talk about a case study or
yeah.
a little caselet or something. I also try to give just a everyday example that someone might be like, "Oh my gosh, that was that principle that happened to me. It had nothing to do with somebody creating a marketing campaign necessarily. It just, it happened to me." Then I give a lot of just very, bulleted takeaways. Use it this way, use it this way, use it this way, use it this way. So for this particular one, autonomy bias, what was interesting was when I was a young copywriter working at what's now Digitas, I came in one day and my boss was like, "I finally have the lead to this letter. I've been wrestling with this lead to this letter for days now." And what he was trying to do is create a letter that was going to convince businesses who had previously had AT&T to choose AT&T now that the telecom was
Monopoly
was
got.
being broken up. The monopoly,
Yeah.
thank you, was being broken up. So even if you wanted to stay, you still had to choose. But a lot of people were going to Sprint or MCI because hey, it was something new, and why not? And he ended up, saying something like, you have a decision to make, and if you don't make one soon, someone will make it for you. And it worked incredibly well. And so, but when he told me about it, I thought, oh, that's interesting. Neither he nor I really, were thinking in terms of autonomy bias way back then. I had yet to discover behavioral science. He certainly hadn't either. He just was thinking and thinking and thinking, and decided this would work. But they got a 38.6% response rate to that particular package. Fast forward years later, now I'm a creative director, and I have my own creative department, and we had a client that was doing satellite TV,
Yeah.
and what was happening was, a lot of people were just saying, no, it's not worth it. I'm paying for all these channels I don't use. I don't want to do it. So we ended up using something, we ended up using autonomy bias. We took this new product that the company had, which allowed you to kind of customize your channels. And we just really doubled down on the idea of autonomy bias. We said, hey, this is your choice. You choose what you want. You're not going to be paying for things that you don't want. You can put these little packets together to create a custom channel for yourself. And it did incredibly well. They got a double-digit response rate. We created a control for them. So there really is this innate desire for people to just not be told what to do. That, an adjunct to that is this idea of choice. And when you tell people, hey, look, the choice is yours, it's up to you. You ask them to do something, but you say, it's up to you, the choice is yours, it's your decision. You can actually double the number of people that will say yes to you. It's called the BYAF technique, but you are free, BYAF. But you are free. It's like, Tim, I'd really like you to do this, but of course the choice is up to you. And it just makes you more likely because you're reminded, look, it's me that's in charge, and people are more likely to do it. Researchers at Tulane University found that if you put two things down in front of people, they're much more likely to make a buying decision in the moment than if you just put one thing in front of them. And, and Tim, you might say, well, that's crazy. Someone wants this coffee mug or they don't want it. What difference does it make if there's another coffee mug next to it? But, when there's only one, the question is, do I not want it? When there's two, the question is, which of these two do I want?
Yeah.
And we're much more likely to make the decision.
There's an old sales technique which you don't say, will you have a meeting? You say, can you make next Tuesday or next Thursday? And then the decision is about that.
Yes. It's
And
very powerful, though. It works.
It does, yeah. You tell one story also in there about you did. There was a pitch for a credit card came up, and you were not the incumbent. So,
Yeah.
so what you decided was to basically mix it up and stir it up a bit.
Yeah,
Um, so you
there's
went
a,
in with a particularly zany, because this is we don't get these in the UK anymore. We used to get them all the time. You get an envelope saying, "Here's a credit card," and you did a particular zany mail shot for this. But they gave you some interesting feedback, didn't they?
Yeah, well, so we'd never done a credit card before, and we had the opportunity to pitch, and so we went out and we got all of these different credit card solicitations, and we put them up on the wall. That was our war room, and we studied them, and we thought, okay, whatever we're going to put in the market is going to go up against these. People are going to be seeing all of them because, if you have a certain credit score, you're likely to get, solicited by a number of different credit card companies. And we thought, well, ours has to stand out. And there's something in behavioral science called the uh, von Restorff effect. And basically, it means that people notice and remember things that are different. So I thought,
Yeah.
well, we have to do something that's going to be different because otherwise, you cover up the logo, and any one of these credit card solicitations could be could be the same as the one next to it. So we created this, bright yellow pack with, this fisheye lens shot of somebody on it. It was just very arresting, very interesting. And we go in to present it, and I literally thought I was going to lose my job over this one. The client was like, none of the things that drive credit card response are here. You're not talking about the interest rate. You're not talking about the promo rate. You're not talking about the go-to rate. You're not talking about the fact there's no annual fee. And we're like, yeah, I know, they all say that. And they're like, yeah, they all say that for a reason.
For a reason.
So we kind of quickly ran back to the agency. They were gracious. They gave us the input, and then we were able to create another package that had those elements, but that displayed them in a different way. It was still fresh. It was still unlike the next 6 packages that were selling credit cards, but the important information was there. And so they ended up hiring us, and we went on to establish, I think, 7 or 8 separate controls over the course of our relationship with them. So we figured it out, but that one moment we just got a little too carried away. And sometimes that happens in marketing. We think, well, in order to catch someone's attention, we have to be different. And sometimes that can work, but other times it can backfire. Sometimes we need to say, look, you can trust us because we are like other products or services in the industry. You don't have to worry that we're going to be so far out there that we're not going to be any good for you. So being different is good, but you have to know how different to be. You have to know when to really push it and when to kind of rein it in a little bit, so you've got just enough difference to be noticed, but you're not so different that you lose people's trust.
So what is the I'm trying to pronounce it. Zigarnik Effect, then.
Yeah, the Zigarnik Effect. It's
The
named
Zigarnik Effect, yeah.
Yeah, it was named for a Russian psychologist named Bluma Zigarnik. And what she found was we have a tendency to remember things until we have a tendency to remember things that are unfinished. So until we can kind of cross them off the list, they stay in the back of our mind, and they kind of nag at us, nag at us, nag at us. It's why cliffhangers do so well in the media. We're watching, I don't know, Game of Thrones or Squid Game or whatever. We want to know what's going to happen next. What's the next episode? How is this going to end? We want to know, what that, what the finale is. We want that completion. We want that closure. And so marketers can use this because if people want to know what's going to happen next, if they're going to be remembering things until they can cross it off the list, we can send messages like abandoned cart emails. Hey, you put this in your cart, but you didn't buy it. I received one from a company where they said, hey, look, you designed your card, but you didn't purchase it. Come back and purchase it. And they're just reminding us. It's also one of the reasons why those loyalty punch cards work so well, where you can have 10 blank boxes, and the idea is get a check mark in
Oh
each
yeah,
of the
we've got loads
boxes,
of
right?
those for coffee shops and stuff like that. But you want to fill it up, don't you?
You want to get each one filled out. And so there's some research that shows that if you hand someone a card and the first box is already checked, they're 79% more likely to get the other boxes checked. So instead of having 10 blank boxes, you can have 11 boxes, 10 of which are blank and one of which is pre-checked. It's still the same 10 purchases someone has to make, but because it's been started, people are much more likely to finish it, 79% more likely. And that's, coffees and car washes and all kinds of purchases, really.
So talk to us about status quo bias.
So status quo West, that's a tough one that marketers often have to overcome. So what happens is, it's like inertia sets in, and people, our customers, our prospects are just kind of happy keeping things the way they are. We don't like to change things up as a rule. It just keep things as they are. It requires less mental effort. It requires less physical effort. And so what we need to do as marketers somehow is we need to overcome that if we're trying to get someone to try a new product. I mean, if we're trying to retain our customers, status quo bias is it's very powerful. That's great, but if we're trying to win somebody over, we need to somehow upset it. And there are a few different ways to do that, but a lot of them involve, of course, behavioral science. But if you're trying to overcome somebody kind of being just stuck in their ways, you need to maybe make them feel that they'll lose out if they don't make a change, that there's that there's something at risk. Or maybe you use social proof, and you explain to them a lot of other people are doing this. Maybe that's why you should consider kind of shaking off your old routine and trying something new. Or you can try using the reason why. Behavioral scientists have found that people are more likely to do what we ask them to do if we give them a reason why. So if you're trying to get someone to, upend their current vendor relationship or their current product preference, just telling them why your product might be better or your service might be better is a way to kind of shake them out of the status quo.
Nancy, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. I found it. I actually sat down and read it. I got it. I think it was a Thursday or Friday, and I sat down, and it was over a weekend. It was just like pay, and I don't normally do that with business books. It was I had to rush on to find out what the next thing was because it was just so interesting. Anyway, I found it really interesting, and that's Nancy's book, Using Behavioral Science in Marketing. Drive customer action and loyalty by prompting instinctive responses.
Tim, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking with you and sharing this information with your guests, your listeners, rather. So thank you so much, and thank you for your kind
Remind
words.
people where they can get hold of you, Nancy.
Sure. So, well, you can get my book from Kogan Page or Amazon or any place fine books are sold. You can find me on Twitter at NHARHUT at NHarhut. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, or you can just email me nharhut@me.com.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing the details about your book and also being willing to be quizzed by me about all the different behavioral science aspects. So thank you so much, Nancy, and thank you for everybody for all the comments that came in as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate